probably the biggest lesson was the difference between top line and bottom line, right? Like the clients pay you, right? So I'm making money, but then you realize that if you're giving away all that money to the employees, and that's a good thing to do, but you can get yourself into trouble if you're not also profitable as a business. And so I had to learn a lot about profit margins and how to balance the cost of things in relation to the revenue that was coming in.
Hello and welcome to the Pivot to Profit podcast. I am so excited to have this amazing conversation today with Katie Wagner. How are you, Katie?
I'm terrific. How are you?
Fabulous, fabulous. Let me officially introduce you to the audience. Katie Wagner spent 15 years as a television and radio journalist working for news outlets all over the world, including ABC, CBS, Fox, CNN, and NPR. Today, Katie owns a full-service digital marketing agency made up of journalists just like herself. The agency KWSM, a digital marketing agency, was founded in 2010 and specializes in lead generation. The KWSM team uses brand journalism to position their clients as thought leaders. Fantastic. This is huge for many business owners to be established as a thought leader. So let's start by asking the first question. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Ooh, I always wanted to be a journalist, or president, but a journalist was close second. Yeah, I always knew I would go to journalism school. I always wanted to be in television and radio, and it was an amazing career. I loved it.
Okay, so it was like little Katie sitting at home talking into her hairbrush?
Yes, 100%. And having, pretend radio shows where we'd invite all the other neighbor kids to be interviewed. I was ahead of the curve with podcasting, for sure.
I love it. I love it. So, Katie, what were you taught about money as a kid? Was money good? Was money bad? Should you want it? All of those things.
So I love that question because I know now that I grew up fairly wealthy. My parents do quite well. I did not know that as a child because when I would ask about money and say, Dad, are we rich? He would say, we're comfortable. You don't need to worry about it. We're comfortable.
Okay.
And I realized as I grew up that I didn't know what comfortable was. Like, am I comfortable? Pam, do I have enough to be comfortable? Should I have more? And I know we all have our baggage around money, but it was very off-putting because I never knew what enough was or what I should be striving for.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And I asked that question, Katie, because so many entrepreneurs, I call it money trauma. We have money trauma. And there's the words that were put into us as very young children determines our financial landscape and limits our income potential. And we don't even realize it's there. So yes, what is comfortable? And the funny thing is, Katie, everyone's definition of comfortable is very different.
Yes, I imagine.
Okay, so let's talk early career. We wanted to be a journalist. We start out like, where did you hit out the gate that's like, I have made it, I'm a journalist?
So my first job was actually at National Public Radio. I went to school at Boston University, and the NPR station is right next door to campus there. And so I started interning there. And then they hired me. And so my first job out of college was to be a reporter there at National Public Radio in Boston.
Amazing.
And I loved it. And then I got recruited to start a news station in Haverhill, Massachusetts, so just outside of Boston. And I went there and was the main anchor there. And then someone drove through town and heard me on the radio and called me and said, have you ever considered being in television? And I said, no. And they said, well, we think you could do it. Come and interview. And my first TV job was in Portland, Maine at the ABC affiliate there.
How fun is that? They heard you on the radio and they're like, that voice has something. And then they called and we're like, okay, so what was it like to be moving from radio to TV? Because that's a big transition.
It was, yeah. And the part I like least about being on TV is being on TV, right? You have to worry about what you look like, and people would call the station and be like, she needs to wear more lipstick, or I don't like that color on her, or that, hairstyle. And so it's a little bit of a different focus because not only is it now about storytelling and journalism, it's about what you look like sometimes, and And that was hard, but also TV back then had a wider reach, and podcasts didn't really exist. This was 2000, early 2000s. And so yeah, I had a wider reach, I had a bigger audience, and so I liked that part of it. And being able to tell stories with visuals and work with camera people and that sort of thing.
Okay, I love it. So as a TV then journalist, what were some of your highlights? What are some things that you're most proud of being there telling stories of?
Well, the way I got picked up by the network is that you may not remember that on 9/11, one of the hijackers actually had been living in Portland, Maine. And he had been there for several years and had a life there. And so on the morning of 9/11, I was working in Portland, and it became my job to find out about this person. And I tracked down his girlfriend and people who he'd worked with and got to tell that story. And it's sad to think about now, because it was my big break that story then got picked up by the network, and I got a step up in my career. But it was one of the most impactful things I've ever covered, because here was this, by all measures, horrible person that nobody knew about. He was just a normal member of the community, and he had a girlfriend and a job and friends, and everyone was shocked. And I was young back then, and it was eye-opening that this could be such a duality.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
And so that got you into the big network. So what was it like being front and center, big letter, TV stations? What did that look like?
It was wonderful. I loved it, right? And I was not their star, right? I was a utility player. I anchored sometimes in the middle of the night, right? But I loved it because you're exposed to, it's like any profession where you're exposed to people who are truly at the top of their craft. And, I think I was probably starstruck for most of the time, watching people who'd been doing it for much longer than I have. And especially the women who really fought to make it big in that industry. Recently, like in the past year, I got to meet Judy Woodruff, who was one of my idols. And she started in an Atlanta television station locally, and that's where I'm from, Atlanta. And then she worked at CNN and then PBS and then back to CNN. And so I always knew of her, but she was one of the real trailblazers in the industry. And hearing her talk about how hard it was in the 70s to be a female journalist, and then know how far we'd come, that was huge for me.
Amazing. I love that you had that whole evolution of meeting her. So let's talk about your journey out of being in front of the camera and starting your agency in 2010. So what was that like, where you're like, you know what, I have a desire to do something else? Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. Being a business owner takes a lot. So what was your story of like, let me step into this new thing?
Well, I didn't intend to step into a new thing. So in the last 5 years of my TV career, Facebook came out and social media started to get big, and we realized that nobody was going home to watch the 5 o'clock news anymore, because they could get headlines on Facebook and Twitter and see videos on YouTube, and these channels were just sort of eating market share. And my bosses at CNN at the time said, "You're young, get out there and learn how to use these channels and get our audience back." And the more I learned to use the channels, I realized our audience wasn't coming back. And this was the new way of communicating, the new way people wanted information. And so I really left to be able to stay on top of that curve, and thought I would be a consultant helping business owners understand how to tell their story. I did not, there wasn't an entrepreneurial bone in my body back then. I did not know I was starting an agency. I just knew that people were going to need help to understand how to capitalize on storytelling for their own businesses in these new venues. And so I thought it would be me in my spare bedroom with my yoga pants, and a laptop, just helping people. And I accidentally grew an agency. So 16 years later, here we are.
So tell me about an early financial win of you realizing, hey, I might actually have a digital marketing agency and this might actually work.
Well, this is a little bit embarrassing, but back then people recognized me from TV, right? And so when I would meet people in the grocery store or whatever, they would know who I was, and I'd tell them what I was doing now. And being on TV gave me right or wrong, a degree of credibility.
Yeah.
And so it was actually 6 weeks after I started my company that I had a full roster of clients and 3 employees. And I think at that point, Pam, I looked in the mirror and thought, oh, I'm building a business. And I had to make a decision about whether I was going to try to have a job for myself and be a consultant, or whether I was actually going to build an asset, a business. And I took that path. And I like to say I was either egotistical or naive enough to think I could do it, because it is not an easy path, and it has not been easy over the past 16 years. But I think early on I knew this could really go if I put my heart and soul into it, and so I did.
Yeah. 6 weeks in and you've got a full roster and 3 team. All of a sudden you are not like a hobby. This is a real legit business. So what did you have to learn about money when in those early days? Because there's this thing called payroll, and it comes every week or every other week or once a month, and like you've got to have money for it. So what were some early lessons there of like, this is a business, I do actually have to pay attention to numbers? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I now remember in TV, I've never had a boss. I've never been a boss. It's a much more lateral structure, right? I've never had a corporate job. And so the first thing I had to learn was how to be in business, how to be a leader. And so there was a lot of late night Googling about how do you have employees? How do you run a business, you know? And yes, my employees are funny. They like to get paid. And so I did have to figure that part out. And I think probably the biggest lesson was the difference between top line and bottom line, right? Like the clients pay you, right? So I'm making money, but then you realize that if you're giving away all that money to the employees, and that's a good thing to do, but you can get yourself into trouble if you're not also profitable as a business. And so I had to learn a lot about profit margins and how to balance the cost of things in relation to the revenue that was coming in. So that was number one. And I think number two was probably cash flow, right? That just because someone's promised to pay us doesn't mean they do it on time or they do it on my timeline.
Yeah.
And yet those paychecks have to go out every 2 weeks, right? And so it was setting up pro formas and doing 13-week rotating projections to know how my cash was going to come in and what that cash flow looked like, and building up an operating account so that I had a safety net. All of those were lessons I had to learn the hard way.
I love everything you just said. Thank you. Thank you. So were those lessons that you learned by yourself, or did you have outside people coach you and teach you on that?
Mostly myself, because I did do a lot of Googling and a lot of deep dive to try to figure this out. But as part of educating myself, I actually joined Vistage,
Okay.
which is a CEO peer group. And I've been a Vistage member for 10 years now. And I've been exposed to a lot of CEOs with bigger companies than I have. And I learn a lot from watching them and how they run their businesses. So I always think it's good to have mentors and peers that you can ask questions of and that you can emulate in your own stuff.
Absolutely. As an entrepreneur, it doesn't have to be a solo journey. So I love to hear when people are in rooms with people who are where they are. There's people ahead of them on their journey, behind them, because in this world of business, things go south and you need someone to pick up the call and be like, hey, so-and-so just walked out of my business. What do I do now? Right. And just be like, being able to have those conversations, because that's, as business owners, the community that we need, not the flashy, look at my new car, look at my new house, look at my trip, but like, hey, this is hard. What do I do? So I love that you have that community.
Absolutely. And this isn't money related, but I think one of the lessons is you can't talk to your staff about your bad days, right?
No.
So like if there's a struggle with how to run the business or making a decision, I didn't have anyone to talk to about that. I couldn't go to my team and say, I'm worried about payroll, right? And so having people that are peers to discuss that with was invaluable for me.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. So now you've been doing this for 16 years. What does KWSM do? Who do you serve? Because I find I've talked to lots of marketing people, but a digital marketing agency can mean lots of different things. So help us understand what you're doing now, who you're serving, all of that.
Indeed. So we are a lead generation agency. Lead gen is all we do. And if you think about marketing being about branding and awareness, those things are important. They're nice, but I really like revenue. And so our work is directly tied to the revenue that we create for our clients. So it is measurable, it's quantifiable, we have a positive ROI, but we are generating leads for all different kinds of businesses. So we work across B2B and B2C, sometimes manufacturers who have long technical sales cycles and their sales teams need more at-bats, they need more people to talk to. We can make a pipeline there. Sometimes it's B2B professional services like wealth managers or attorneys that just need clients.
Yeah.
And then also people forget that recruiting is lead generation. And in this environment, a lot of people are trying to hire, and we can use lead generation pipelines to attract candidates and not just clients.
Okay.
So that's the kind of work we do.
So going deeper, is that Meta ads? Is it LinkedIn outreach? Is it newsletters? Like, what is working? Because everyone has a new flashy AI something that's going to solve all your problems. So what is the actual fulfillment that's working that you guys are helping clients with?
Well, it's different every day because each business is different. So they all have different tactics. And what worked last week isn't going to work next week. You alluded to the fact that things are changing rapidly in this industry, right? And so there is no one size fits all, which keeps us on our toes. But one of the things that we've really leaned into is brand journalism, which you mentioned, which is going back to our roots as storytellers. Because here's the thing, Pam, with the AI boom, let's call it, and the rush of information out there, not all of it accurate, trust in the internet is lower than it ever has been. And this is a real hurdle for lead generation, because when consumers or business people don't trust what they're reading online, it's very hard to position yourself there as an expert and get them to trust you. And so we know that people always trust people, and that, storytelling is a fundamental, for ages, way we communicate with each other. And so brand journalism really dives into the stories behind our clients, the stories about the people who use their products and services, who make and deliver their products and services. And the content we're creating positions them as thought leaders. It has stats and facts and quotes and real life anecdotes in it. So it's actually content that can't be created by AI, because we are interviewing our clients and using real examples in that content. And what we found is that when you put out content like that, it actually does convert better. These days, you probably noticed that thanks to AI overviews, the traffic to your website has dropped. That's normal. It's happened to everybody, because we're seeing a rise of something called zero-click searches, where people Google, they read the AI overview, they got their answer, they don't need to click through. And so traffic to the website has dropped across the board. That hurts lead gen. But what we've really determined is it's just top of the funnel content that's being cannibalized by AI. So like, why do I need a CPA? 10 questions to ask my CPA, etc. You don't need to create that general awareness education content anymore, which is a lot of the way we used to drive traffic to our websites. Now, what you need to create is middle or bottom of the funnel content, which is more decision-making content. It's about what's your process, what makes you different from your competitors, case studies of the people you've helped. And if we're creating that type of content through brand journalism, we rank lower on the page in the search engine. But when people see our clients in the AI overview, and then they scroll down and see them again, if they click through, they are more likely to convert. That's warmer traffic.
Gotcha.
So that's the content strategy. That's a lot of the way that we drive traffic to our clients' websites. But then an important part of lead generation is we put IP detection on every website and heat maps. So if a business owner comes to your website, doesn't fill out the form, doesn't contact you, we can still tell they've been there, and we can tell what they look at. And so every Monday, we're providing a list for our clients about, here are the people in your target audience that have been on your website. And then we create sales enablement collateral that they can use to follow up with those people, whether it's an email drip or a one sheet they're going to send out or a retargeting ad. It can look like a lot of different things tactically, but that's the methodology. You get them to the website, you watch their behavior, and you follow up with things that are relevant to them.
Okay. I love it. Yeah. No, it's what I hear you saying is top of funnel is helpful for the AI bot, but it's the middle of funnel that really builds the trust that you're a real person and you do what you say, and the brand awareness, so that they do click and follow up.
Yes, that's where you're going to get your lead generation value from.
Okay. So let's talk about things that used to work that aren't working. Because like you say, what worked last week isn't going to work next week. So what are mistakes that you're seeing business owners make when they come to you that you're like, okay, full stop, don't do that anymore. Now that doesn't work. Like, what are those top mistakes that you're seeing in the industry?
Well, one that we're all talking about is how much SEO or optimization has changed.
Yes.
Because now you don't just want to rank in Google, you want to rank in those AI overviews. And when people use LLMs instead of Google, you want those recommending you too. So if I go on Gemini or ChatGPT instead of Google, you need them to direct me to you. So it's not that SEO is not working, it's just that SEO has evolved. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes is you're not evolving your strategy to keep up with that, right? You're going to quickly get left behind, or you're not evolving the content strategy to make the right kind of content that's going to deliver results these days. So I don't think any tactics are wrong per se. It's just that they change frequently, and you have to understand what the right approach is now. Back when we started 16 years ago, social media was a really big way to generate leads. These days, social media is not a lead generation channel, although it can be a supportive branding channel, but we're not, posting on Facebook and driving a lot of clients for our clients. So I think it's just the evolution and staying on top of that. And really the biggest mistake around that is not taking time to do the research and the strategy up front. So it's not actually digging in and saying, where is my target audience spending time? What are they looking at online? How do I reach them? Because a lot of people just jump in and start doing things.
Yeah.
And that's how you can waste a lot of time and money.
Got you. So what do your clients typically look like? What is your ICA, your avatar?
Our clients are typically lower middle market. Maybe they're 1 to 30 million, something like that. We certainly have clients above and below that, but that's the bulk of them. We're industry agnostic, so they do anything and everything, which is terrific. Like I said, we can work across B2B and B2C, and they're all over the country. So we have offices in San Diego, Orange County, California, Atlanta, and Las Vegas, and we serve clients sort of across the board. So
awesome. So what's on the horizon for you and your firm, Katie? What's coming next?
Well, let's see. We're just going to try not to screw it up. That's the big thing. When I get out of bed, I say, don't mess up today, right? My industry, Pam, is changing so much right now. AI is commoditizing a lot of that branding and awareness marketing. We're not seeing that as much in lead gen because we're so tied to revenue. They don't want to risk revenue by trying to do it the AI way, which is great, knock on wood. But the industry is changing. A lot of small agencies are going out of business. We're in talks to acquire a couple of other agencies right now, which is nice. And so we're going to really just stay the course and lean into what we've always done really well and not jump at every shiny new thing. Because I think there is a danger that everybody says, oh, this thing is great now, and we all abandon what's been working to jump on the new bandwagon. Well, lead gen's a long-term strategy. You don't know until 6 months, a year, 18 months from now, whether it worked or not. And you can derail a lot of plans. So we tend to stay the course and then test sparingly as an add-on for our clients, to try things out rather than jump to the newest thing. So you won't hear me talking a lot about like, ooh, what's new and next. You'll hear me talking about what do we know is reliable, because we need that foundation for our clients.
I love it. Makes total sense. Katie, thank you so much for sharing your profit story with us. Where can people connect with you?
Let's see, I'm really active on LinkedIn. If you want to look me up there, it's just Katie Wagner, or our website, which is kwsmdigital.com.
Amazing. That's all for today's episode of Pivot to Profit. If you need help understanding your numbers, increasing your profit, and understanding that it's not the top line that matters, just go to pamjordan.com. My team would love to meet with you. And as a reminder, it's not what you make, it's what you keep.